Call to order this regular Board of Directors meeting for the Siloam Springs Board of Directors, June 7, 2022. Roll call.
Sappington,
Here.
Smiley,
Here.
Burns,
Here.
Hunt,
Here.
Chrysler,
Here.
Allen, Carroll.
Here.
At this time, if you all will please stand as Director Carroll leads us in a word of prayer, and please remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Let's pray. Father, tonight we give thanks for the blessing of a beautiful day, but that we can also be able to recognize with the dawn of each new day the majesty that you hold and that you are still in charge, and then we can look to you for strength. We can look to you for guidance. You have already given the wisdom that we need to grab hold of and to utilize. As a city, we look to you to make those wise choices so that we can live in harmony. We can live in the love that you called us to. In these things we give thanks. In Jesus' name, amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You may be seated. At this time, I would like to ask that any electronic device that you might have be silenced. And thank you for that. Our next item is public input. The public may address the Board of Directors regarding any item that is not listed on our board's regular agenda. Is there anyone that would like to speak to the board? Please give us your name and address and come to the podium.
Hello, everybody. My name is Tyler Dees, and I live at 2584 North Hyco Street, and been a resident here in Siloam 22 years, and just wanted to take a quick minute and introduce myself to the folks I don't know, and I'm thankful to be running for the state Senate seat in District 35, which is Western Benton County and Western Washington County. And honestly, what I wanted to say is thank you. Thank you for running a wonderful city that I'm so proud to get to tell people I'm from. And I also have a report. Now, I've been on the campaign trail. I have seen our wonderful city administrator, Philip Patterson, out there as well. He's working hard for y'all as well at all the Rotary meetings and the Kiwanis and all. And I just want to say thank y'all. And thank you for again, for the pride that I have to be from here. And it'd be a joy to get to represent us in Little Rock. So just want to say thank you and hello. And that's all this evening. So thank you.
Thank you, Tyler. Is there anyone else? If not, is there anyone that would like to address the Board of Directors concerning any item on our consent agenda? There is not, so we will move on to the consent agenda. Item A, regular meeting minutes from May 17th, 2022. And I would like to make a comment about the minutes. Director Allen had named 4 students that were recognized by the Governor's Young Artist Competition at our last meeting, and those names were inadvertently left out of the minutes, so they have been added. So that change has been made to those minutes. Next is item B, grant application and acceptance of grant offer, Arkansas Department of Aeronautics, Hangar Rehabilitation for the airport, $25,000. Item C, dedication of utility easements, 507 North Madison Street. D, dedication of utility easements, 22218 Farley Road. Item E, resolution 32-22, special use development permit, short-term rental, 415A South Maxwell Street. F, resolution 33-22, special use development permit, short-term rental, 2000 South College Street. G, resolution 34-22, authorizing the use of alternate cash flow projection valuation to show actuarial soundness of the Siloam Springs Firemen's pension funds. And that is all of the items on our consent agenda. Is there anyone, directors, that you would like to have removed, or any comments about the consent agenda?
Madam Mayor,
Yes, Brad.
can I pull A, please?
Yes, sir. A. Okay, item A has been pulled. Anyone else? If not, do I hear a motion to approve our consent agenda as presented with the changes? Well, I'm sorry. Item A has been removed, so we will look for a motion to approve the consent agenda with items B, C, D, E, F, and G, with A removed. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Smiley,
Yes.
Burns,
Yes.
Hunt,
Yes.
Chrysler,
Yes.
Carroll,
Yes.
Sappington.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Brad, item A.
Oh, I want to correct myself from the last meeting when we spoke of connectivity. So the connectivity piece off Washington Street to Tahlequah, I was incorrect. It is 8 feet, not 10. And I just want to be on the record for that. Thank you.
Thank you. So at this time, is there anyone that would like to make a motion to approve item A for the regular meeting minutes, May 17?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Burns,
Yes.
Hunt,
Yes.
Chrysler,
Yes.
Carroll,
Yes.
Sappington,
Yes.
Smiley.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Before we move on to our regularly scheduled items, I am going to remind the directors that you do need to pull your mics to your closer to your mouth and speak into that. This last week, whenever they were trying to listen to the recording, if you are not up close to that mic, they are having a hard time understanding you, even though you may be heard here. Whenever the ladies have to go back and transcribe those minutes, they are having difficulty with being able to understand that. So if you will, please move those mics to your mouth or lean forward as you're speaking. So thank you for that. So at this time, we will move to our regularly scheduled items, which is ordinances. Ordinance 22-13, second reading, amending City Code Section 66-90, noise.
Madam Mayor, ladies and gentlemen of the board, Captain Miller, Siloam Springs Police Department. Per the direction received by the board on the first reading of the ordinance, staff has updated the attached proposed code amendments and ordinance to include the list of exceptions to the noise regulations in 6690B and address the noise created in public parks by the playing of radios and other devices in 6690C2. So the staff is available if you have any questions.
Thank you, Captain Miller. Is there anyone in the audience that has a comment or question about ordinance 22-13? If not, directors?
Madam Mayor,
Yes, Mindy.
I just want to thank you for your work in being willing to revise that. As I mentioned at the last meeting, and especially in regards to parks, we want our young people to enjoy the parks, but we also want the neighbors around the parks to be able to enjoy their quiet. So hopefully these will address some of those issues, this new ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? If not, I will accept a motion to place ordinance 22-13 on its second reading, suspending the rules and reading title only.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Hunt,
Yes.
Chrysler,
Yes.
Carroll,
Yes.
Sappington,
Yes.
Smiley,
Yes.
Burns,
Yes.
Motion is approved. Philip?
Ordinance number 22-13, an ordinance amending section 66-90 of the Siloam Springs Municipal Code with respect to prohibited noise.
Thank you. Next is ordinance 22-14, first reading. vacation of an unnamed right-of-way, 900 block of East Tahlequah Street. Ben?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the board. Ben Rhodes, Senior Planner. And it is coming up right now. There we go. So yes, before you is a ordinance to close an unused right-of-way. It's an old alleyway that runs north-south in the 900 block of East Tahlequah Street. This is the block that's between North Gunter and North Hyco and north of Tahlequah and south of Cornell Street. And in addition to the right-of-way closure, they're also wanting to consolidate the lots within that block into one larger lot, basically eliminating the smaller sublots within that block there. The request is to close actually a 16-foot wide alleyway, and the easements associated with the lot consolidation will be presented to the city board on July 5th that coincide with the third reading of the right-of-way closure ordinance. And so here you see this is the applicant is Simmons Foods, which owns the property, and this is the one of the surveys that was included with the petition to close the right-of-way. As you show, it's a 16-footer between right in the middle of the block there between those four streets. And then this is the lot consolidation. The portion of that right-of-way is being maintained as a utility easement. As you can see, they're about 10 feet wide. And that is per city policy. It's not that we have a specific utility going through there, just that when we close old right-of-ways, we retain them for utility easements. There is no immediate plans for development in this area, although the owners may eventually formalize the parking for their employees there, essentially paving that kind of thing. But I don't believe they have any immediate plans for any developments or anything in this area. Here's an aerial view of what it looks like now. As you can see, the parking is included there. And then we have a site view, and I included just that's not exactly where the alleyway is, but roughly where that old alleyway is. It's not been used by the public or anything like that. Which allows this to be closed. Staff is recommending approval of the right-of-way closure and the related easement dedications. As I mentioned, will be presented to the board upon acceptance of the third reading of the ordinance. And with that, we're available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to address Ordinance 22-14? There is not. Directors, comments or questions? There being none, do I have a motion to place Ordinance 22-14 on its first reading, suspending the rules and reading title only?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Chrysler,
Yes.
Carroll,
Yes.
Sappington,
Yes.
Smiley,
Yes.
Burns,
Yes.
Hunt,
Yes.
Philip?
Ordinance number 22-14, an ordinance vacating and abandoning certain right-of-way within the Hyco addition to the city of Siloam Springs.
Thank you. Next is our resolutions. First is Resolution 35-22, Final Plat Development Permit, Somerset Addition, Phase 1, 3100 to 3400 block of East Kenwood Street. Ben?
Yes, thank you again, Madam Mayor, members of the board. So what you're looking at is a final plat development permit, finishing out Phase 1 of the Somerset Addition. This will be creating 75 new single-family residential lots, and this is located at the 3000 block of East Kenwood Street. And here you see the plat. I've broken this out into two different slides because it's a fairly long property, and it's really hard to see all of that on one slide here. So this is the southern area. We have two streets that have been built that come in off of Kenwood, essentially going up north with the blocks for each residential single-family lot broken out by the streets there. And then those streets continue all the way up to the north, with the detention basin being proposed for the northeast corner. And then this final area was the preliminary plat that was recently approved by the board for the second phase of the subdivision. And this did go back to the Planning Commission. So as you know, final plats normally don't go to the Planning Commission because if they correspond with the preliminary plat, they essentially are giving permission to build as the final plat, and this is really a function of the Board of Directors to accept the final plats. However, in situations where the plat does change, we do take that back to the Planning Commission just to give them a chance to look at the changes and see why, and et cetera. And so what you're looking here is the on the left side is what was originally presented with the preliminary plat. We had two hammerhead endings of the street and then the detention back in the corner. And what's been proposed now is that the detention's now back on this side rather than on the back of the property. And these are no longer hammerheads. And the only reason for that is because they did decide to go through with the next phase. So there's no real need to have those hammerhead endings anymore because this next phase is literally being built. So it's just going to be a continuous street. There won't be a need for a turnaround or anything like that. Here is the property with this being constructed. This is taken about a month ago or so. So with the conditions, we are recommending approval with 3 conditions. The first and second conditions are standard on filing a plat regarding the filing the plat and the maintenance bond. The third condition is a carryover from the approval of the preliminary plat, and that was the need for deed restrictions to be placed on lots 75 and 60 to prevent vehicular access directly to Kenwood Street. And that's just to eliminate the excessive driveways out on Kenwood. They would be coming in on the side streets rather than directly on the Kenwood. The condition from the Planning Commission staff report regarding the performance bond or irrevocable letter of credit, the applicant did provide the letter of credit from a lending institution accredited in the state of Arkansas, which meets that requirement for any incompleted work that still needs to be finished in the subdivision subsequent to approving the final plat. And with that, we're available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to address Resolution 35-22? There is not. Directors? There being none, do I have a motion to approve Resolution 35-22 with the recommended conditions?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Carroll,
Yes.
Sappington,
Yes.
Smiley,
Yes.
Burns,
Yes?
Hunt,
Yes.
Chrysler,
Yes.
Motion is approved. Next is Resolution 36-22, amending Municipal Code, Section 53-11, fences around detention ponds. Justin?
Thank you. Justin Bland, City Engineer. So what we have here is a revision to the drainage manual with respect to fencing around detention basins. The current manual has some vague language that staff has used to require fencing around any wet basin. We've gotten some kind of feedback to make this a little bit more clear. We've used this existing language in the recent developments such as Ridgestone and Foxtail to require fencing around those wet basins. The proposed revision will explicitly state that a 4-foot fence is required around any permanent lake or wet basin, and also around any dry basin where the side slopes exceed a 3-to-1 slope. This fencing will be constructed by the developer at their cost, and then the city would be responsible for any long-term maintenance of the fencing. Staff is recommending approval and is available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone in the audience that has a question or comment about Resolution 36-22? If not, directors?
Justin.
Yeah.
Is this, will this go back and take care of the ones that are already there?
No, it won't. I believe there are 3. There's the one on Holly Street and Quarter Road. There's the Gateway Pond where we just put the guard railing up, and then there's the one at the hospital.
Okay.
And I think those are the 3, at least larger ones in town that would not be retrofitted. But I believe Philip had sent a letter to the property owner on the Holly and Quarter Street one requesting them to do it. I don't know if there was a response to that or not, but I know we've requested it.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Mayor.
Yes. Wow.
Justin, I've been reading up on these because they're a great concern, because we have a lot of floodplains and low-lying level areas. And in my reading, see if I can explain this how I'm concerned that the detention and retention ponds aren't helping us in the certain areas. Do we need to decide if this area is a detention pond area or this area is a retention pond area? Do we let the person that is developing decide? And also the infrastructure of the pond itself, the cost, is that passed on to the builder? And I would like to see us look more at the gates that control the movement of the water from and the height that we allow them to be.
Okay. So that's the first question about detention versus retention in certain areas. True retention, we don't have any of that really in Siloam, because that's where it would actually completely soak back into the ground. So what we call the wet ponds are they become permanent lakes because they just continually hold water. That's typically driven as a choice by the developer. The wet ponds, they do have advantages. They have water quality advantages because the water is able to set and all the sediment and stuff is able to drop out of it. Some developers like them just for their aesthetic. I mean, you can put fountains in them. Some developers like them because sometimes it saves them money. I mean, being able not to have slope across there, they don't have to raise the side as much. So the reasoning for it is mixed. But typically we don't dictate that decision as long as they can meet the requirements of the manual as a whole. The second equation, the question was the fencing. That would be paid for by the developer completely, and it would be all done on the front end before we would accept the final plat. And then what was the last question there?
My concern is of the infrastructure within the pond itself, because they can put the gates and different levels in.
Yes.
And I can see advantages of that for us, and who would be responsible for those costs?
So initially it would be them, and then we would just be responsible for any long-term maintenance. So basically, as it sits, since we don't have an active homeowner association or many in the city, some other cities that's a requirement where they would have a homeowner association that would cover all those maintenance and all that stuff, but that just hasn't been set up in Siloam. So as it is right now, it would be the city that would be the long-term cost for that.
Madam Mayor.
Yes, Karen.
I'm not quite sure what she asked. I might be asking the same thing. Is the city responsible for maintaining the ground around? When we put the fences up, obviously there's going to be grass, weeds, something. Who takes care of that?
So if it's a residential detention basin, the city mows it, does the maintenance on it. If it's commercial or industrial, that property owner does it separately.
And how does the city get into it? Is it locked?
Yes. So on the Ridgestone one, the street department put a lock on it with a key, so that they're actually the only ones that would have the key for that.
But if there's homeowners associations, could they be held responsible for maintaining?
The way our code is set up right now, no. And we don't have any active homeowner associations that really do any maintenance on there. But that is an approach that other cities have taken. In a way we could go in the future.
Is that
possibly.
something that we're looking at?
Philip and I have had discussions about that, and I think there's we're talking about a revision to our drainage manual, a big revision, and that might be one part of it possibly.
Madam Mayor.
Yes.
Just so I can clarify with Director Smiley, the gates are not the gates in the fencing, they're within the structure of the
I understand
pond.
that lets
Okay.
the water in and out.
Right,
I understand that.
Okay.
No, but I am presuming that the gates that, or the fencing that you put around it will have a gate as well.
Yes, that's correct, to be able to get the mowing equipment in there and maintenance, yes.
Okay. And they're 4 feet tall?
Uh,
What's the height?
That's just the minimum. That's like a typical chain link
Feet.
fence. Yeah.
I'm kind of glad to see this. I have been concerned, especially about that one on Holly, of children getting into it. I'm concerned about all of them because children do gravitate to water, but that one has a very, seems like that slope is very easy to get down to the water. Plus snakes.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Carol. Brad,
Especially the chain
Madam
link.
Mayor,
Brad. Would you please pull your mic to your mouth, please?
Lord, it's the first time, huh? You ready for this?
I'm ready.
All right.
The ladies will appreciate
I
it.
want to be polite as possible, but you know we have a creek running through the middle of our town, right? I mean, let's just wrap our minds around this. And now we are accepting long-term maintenance of fencing. So we need to dictate what material is used. We need to be on the front end of that, so we do cost savings on the backside. And we are doing it incorrectly as a city. We're wrong. And we need to acquire developers so that we eliminate this problem. This nerve-ending concern that, you know, accidents are going to happen. We put a partial fence over 2 accidents that happened on the gateway, and that thing had been there for years with 0 incidents. And I sit here and I understand the safety concern, but the real concern is that we are not addressing it, and we are not even being firm enough as a city as we develop. And so, you know, I attend all these off-the-wall conferences out there that are not required by any board member. So I just sent one to Philip. I was going to use it in my closing comments. But IRWP, Thursday, June 21st, from 9 to 3:30 p.m., any board member can sign up. Anybody can sign up. It's at Cave Springs, and they're going to be addressing the Northwest Arkansas storm water discussion. It's not just a Siloam problem. It is a Northwest Arkansas problem. And we're totally wrong in what we're doing, not capturing this water, not scrubbing it. You just mentioned what needs to be done. And when Marla was referring to the gateway fencing, they need to be GPS driven by weather. And there's just a ton of things we can do totally different than throwing up these little 4-foot fences because it's going to make you feel good. The kids are going to climb the fences. They're going to be attracted to water. Any 8 to 12-year-old young male or female, that's what kids do. Kids play with snakes. That's what they do. Nobody said anything a couple weeks ago when they're swimming in Sager Creek, jumping off the dam. That's why we have the water out there. So as we go through this, because in a couple of years, the complaint you're going to get from the board that will be sitting will be the maintenance of those fences are poor. They don't look good. You see what I'm saying? And this trifecta of, it's a feel-good ordinance right now, but it's not. We're not solving the long-term problem. And I would just, I know Patterson's going to send some of you staff to this discussion, I believe, and I appreciate that. I'm going to be out of town, or I would be there. But just, we have to think about it differently, and we have to require developers to implement that and to do the low-impact development so this doesn't come back to the table. The very thing that Marla's talking about, this isn't the first time here. Carol, you were on the board. We've had this discussion numerous times. And so we're going to pass this, but it is not the solution. It is not the long-term solution. And as we develop, I feel strongly that we need to make a stance to require developers to do that, and they will reach a little bit deeper in that pocket, and they will do the right thing. And we all know what the right thing is. And if a developer doesn't want to do the right thing, they don't need to build in Siloam. And I think that's where we're at. That's exactly where we're at today.
Madam Mayor?
Yes, Carol.
I would agree with Brett. I like to see how we're wording this, but I do not think the city should take the brunt of the cost. I do believe there comes a time when the developers have to spend some money and not put it on the city. We don't want to keep developers from coming to Siloam Springs, but we want to do some safety features that will protect, and maybe this won't protect children. You can't protect everybody in every situation. There may come a time when something's going to happen at the gateway that we haven't thought about that's going to happen. But I think it's time that the city does pass on some of the expenses that we're spending. I don't think the city should maintain those retention and detention ponds. I think it should be part of the developer or their homeowners association or whatever they form to take care of that expense. And I do agree with Brad, and I do agree with Marla.
Thank you, Carol. Anyone else? If not, do I have a motion to approve Resolution 36-22, amending Municipal Code Section 53-11?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Sappington,
Yes.
Smiley,
Yes.
Burns,
No.
Hunt,
Yes.
Bristler,
Yes.
Carroll.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Next, Resolution 37-22, grant application, NWARPC Transportation Alternative Program, Progress Avenue Side Path, and I will remind you that this is authorizing application. Thank you, Justin.
Thank you, Justin Bland, City Engineer. So as the mayor said, this is a request for TAP grant funding for the Progress Avenue Side Path project. It's across the front of Signature Plaza. It's the same project that I presented at the last meeting. Last time it was for the RDOT TAP grant funding, and then this is for the regional planning pot of funding. Which has a separate application process. It is possible to get funding from one or the other or both. So just as a reminder, this is for a 10-foot wide concrete side path. The cost is expected to be $230,000 pending final design. The TAP grant would cover up to 80% or $184,000 of this. Staff would be including the matching 20% in the 2023 budget request. In addition, if the grant is awarded, staff would be bringing a resolution back requesting for the city to actually accept the grant funds at that point in time. So staff is recommending approval and is available for any questions.
Thank you, Justin. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to make a comment or question on Resolution 37-22? There is not. Directors? There being none, do I have a motion to approve Resolution 37-22 for grant application?
So moved?
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Smiley,
Yes.
Burns,
Yes.
Hunt,
Yes.
Bristler,
Yes.
Carroll,
Yes.
Sappington.
Yes.
Motion is approved. At this time, we are ready for staff reports. And Philip, I believe that is you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Board. So we've previously had a discussion about the split of the city's 1 cent permanent sales tax. So for everybody's knowledge, the city has a 2 cent sales tax, city sales tax. 1 cent of that is permanent. The other 1 cent is divided into 3/8 that will expire in 2026. 3/8 of that cent goes to quality of life and capital improvements in the utilities, and the other 5/8 of that 1 cent goes to pay off the bonds for the water treatment plant expansion. And the 3/8 will expire in 2026. The 5/8 will expire whenever the bonds are paid off. The permanent 1 cent sales tax prior to 2013 was split with 80% of that 1 cent going to streets and 20% going to the general fund. In 2013, the city asked the voters to approve a revision to that split for the next 10 years. That revision changed the split from 80% streets to 40% streets and 40% public safety, with that 40% being split 50-50, 20% each for police and fire, and it has been used for equipment in police and fire. That split, that current split of 40% streets, 20% police, 20% fire, and 20% general fund will expire at the end of October 2023. The last time we discussed this before the board asked me to gather some information because we talked about options. We talked about your option of letting the current split expire and going back to 80% streets and 20% general fund, asking the public to renew the current split, or asking the public to approve a modification to that split. And if you went with option 2 or 3, asking the public whether you want to extend it for 10 years again or make that modified split or the current split permanent. So based on that information from the board, I, as Mr. Dees said, I made rounds to various civic clubs ranging from the American Legion, the Boys and Girls Club Board of Directors, the Main Street Board, the VFW, the History Museum Board, the Chamber of Commerce Board, the Rotary Club, and the Kiwanis Club, explaining this issue before each one of those entities and asking them to make a recommendation to the city board, to you, as to what they thought you should do. And I explained to them that in that 1 cent sales tax, we're generally talking, it's almost $5,400,000, but I just rounded it down to $5 million for that 1 cent sales tax. So currently today, in 2021, $2 million went to streets, $1 million went to fire for equipment, $1 million went to police for equipment, and $1 million went into the general fund. And the options, I created 2 options for modifying that split to give the public some idea of what might happen, and said if you want to modify the split, and I just rounded it up, 5% and 10%. If you took 5% of the total from the 40% that goes to police and fire, 2.5% each, that would move $250,000 total, $125,000 from each police and fire, into the street fund, right? And why would we do that? Because we recognize previously we had discussions with the board about trying to accelerate street projects, right? And one way to do that is more money for streets. The downside is less money for police and fire. The other option under 3B was moving a total of 10% of the total, $250,000 from police, $250,000 from fire, over into streets for an additional $500,000 into streets. It could be 2%, could be 5%, could be 7.5%. I chose 5 and 10 just because they were nice round numbers, and it equaled about $250,500,000, $500,000. The results of that discussion I have in my memo for you, but the results of that discussion were basically that, I'm sorry, let me find it. I talked to about 119 people. 5 recommended it ought to revert back to 80%, 4% of the total. Option number 2 was supported by 54 of those recommendations, or 45% of the total, meaning ask the public to retain the current split. Option 3 combined actually got the largest majority, 51%, but because there was 3A and 3B, 26 people recommended 3A, or 22%, which is moving 5%, and 34 people recommended 3B, which is moving 10%. The point I'm trying to make is while there's 45% for option 2 and 51, I think it was, for option 3, there's not that much difference. I mean, there's 119 people. It's a fairly high probably option percentage of error, but the difference in the total numbers of voting is very small. But there clearly is support, at least in my opinion, from the public of retaining either the current split or making a minor modification to the split. Now, I asked the public to also let you know that if they were supportive of option 2 or option 3, whether or not they were supportive of making it for 10 more years or making it permanent. There was a lot of discussion about, well, I don't like permanent because we need to reassess after 10 years, which is very true. On the flip side, you can always, as a board, go back to the public with a question in 10, 15 years. The downside to a 10-year renewal, in my humble opinion, is just like what we found ourselves the last year or so. The two chiefs can speak to it because in the last couple of years I've said if you're going to use that money, that sales tax equipment fund, you got to pay it off before 2023, before October 2023, because there's no more money. There's no guarantee that there's going to be money. We can't plan beyond 2023, right? So the results of that question of whether or not make it permanent or whether or not to make it only for 10 years, 39% of those polled said that they were good with making it permanent. That was 47 recommendations. 52 people recommended to not make it permanent, which I assume meant for 10 years. That was 44%. And then there were 15 people or 13% that just didn't make a recommendation. They were undecided on that. So again, the numbers are pretty close. 47 people said yes, 52 people said no. It's a very tough decision. From staff's perspective, I think what we need to hear tonight from you is, do you want to put something on the ballot in November? If the answer to that is yes, then we need to know what percentage you want to put on that ballot, because you have to have you have to have the ordinance establishing the question approved and effective by the end of August. If you have 3 individual readings, the first reading has got to be at the next board meeting in order for it to be approved at the end of July, second board meeting in July, and within 30 days become effective. So the last thing I want to do is I want the two chiefs to be able to address you very briefly about what their long-range plans are if they have this money available to them in the future. What I told the public, and many are here who heard me, Tyler heard me I think 3 different times, it's a balancing act. We have needs in our streets. We have needs in public safety. And how do we balance that? We probably have more needs than we have money, which is a typical thing for a city. So how do we balance that out? And it's your call. It's your decision. Whether you let it revert back, nothing has to be done. We go on in October, at the end of October 2023, the split goes back to 80% streets and 20% general fund. $2 million more in street fund will accelerate street projects. It doubles the revenue in streets. But it'll leave almost a $2 million gap in the general fund because we'll have to backfill somehow, some way for equipment in police and fire. I've spoken to you before about what that money was used for. Anything from the new fire training center, the fire tower, to remodeling of Fire Station 2, to relocation of Fire Station 3, to remodeling of the police department, to personal protection equipment, to new fire trucks, new ambulances, new police cars, and the like. That's what that money's been used for. If you make it permanent, if you make a modification to the split and make it permanent, while you might be reducing from $1 million a year to 875 if you take 2.5% each for a total of 5%, or from $1 million to 750,000 if you take 5% each, and you ask the public to make that permanent, that's only going to grow over time. It's still going to grow even if it's 10 years, but it's going to grow. Today, when we budget, we look at 10 years worth of average sales tax growth. We want to be very conservative on that growth. That 10 years is still operating about 3%. The last 4 or 5 years, the reality is sales tax has been growing at a greater clip, about 4% a year. So there's growth coming in sales tax. But it's a very tough decision. And with that, I'm going to offer, Chief Gilbert is pointing to Chief Kreiner. So Kreiner, Chief Kreiner, if you would just help the board understand and the public understand that, you know, regardless of the amount of money we're talking about, if you have this money for the next 10 years or longer, what do you see into the future, the needs of the fire department? That's the question.
Yeah, certainly. Thank you, Philip. Mayor and Board, Jeremy Kreiner, Fire Chief. You know, we certainly are very humbled to have the amount of funding we've had. It's been tremendous. It's an invaluable asset that we've had over the last 9 years now. Retired Fire Chief over here has could speak to it and say, you know, yes, to have this level of funding in his tenure, I'm sure he would have been very envious of where we are today. So, you know, but I think if you look at it, you know, fire department planning is one of those things that is very difficult, and it's an ongoing cyclical process. We get down and visit as a department every year doing a strategic planning session. We look short-term, long-term, mid-term goals, and where we need to be. And we always keep a running list of items that, you know, we feel like will be future projects. And so when we've had this discussion over the last few years, we've started just developing this list. And so, you know, what I've got is not just anecdotal evidence to say, yes, we want to continue to keep our funding. I don't know a police chief or fire chief in the country that would say, yes, here's our money, you can have it back, you know, we won't need it. But then again, we also understand the other needs throughout the city. And so what we started doing was putting together an actual list and trying to put dollar values on some of these items. And what we came up with, and we looked beyond the 10-year scope, we looked at 15 years from today and said, you know, if this funding continues at its current allocation, I think we came up, we put a 3.9% increase in revenue yearly. So we came up with about $22 million worth of, over the next 15 years, of projected revenue at the current allocation. And then we started looking at our expenditures and what some of these projects may be, and we tried to anticipate what some of the costs were. That's a little difficult in this day and age, just with some of the inflationary numbers we've seen, but we kept about a 3 to 4% inflation numbers from where we are today, and we came up with about $24 million, just over $24 million. So representing about a $2 million gap in the next 15 years. Obviously, that could change. We do use this for operational items today, such as, you know, PPE and our air packs and things like that. We have some long-term needs eventually, Fire Station 4 and the related equipment, personnel for that. But also, everything that we've done over the last 9 years also has a shelf life. And so we're looking long-term at, you know, how often do those things need to be replaced, and we're using industry standards and best practices to help put a finger on some of those as far as when we can pull them out of frontline use, put them in reserve. So, you know, there are obviously a lot of variables in there. We can't foresee the future. A lot of things can change. If we have significant growth, if we have significant increase in response duties or response area, all of those things may change. Sales tax declines, things like that. And so I'm not up here trying to play doom and gloom and say buildings will burn and people will die if we don't continue the funding the way it is. I certainly am not going to tell you that. Will it have an impact on our operation? Potentially. And so we'll just have to figure out what that is. So with that, I am open for any questions that you may have.
Directors, any questions for Chief Kreiner? If not, thank you, Jeremy. Gilbert, are you ready?
Mayor, Board, Alan Gilbert, Chief of Police, Siloam Springs Police Department. When I first got here, I saw the STFE money and then we had it there and I was really excited about it. One of the problems when I first got here is we were really behind. When I mean that, our fleet was in really bad shape. And through STFE, and a lot of that was, you know, we just got the Motorola project when I first got here. We're $2.5 million in that, and we're $1 million, $2 million. I may be a little high on that for renovations of the building that was bought. So a lot of equipment couldn't get bought because we're still paying that off. We'll make our last payment as this runs out next year, $388,000 yearly. So going forward, just the things that we've done since I've been here are just upgrades to the training center. We were in bad shape out there. We had no target system. We've got a classroom now out there, a fence, the police department renovations, a complete weapons overhaul. When I got here, we had different weapons with different calibers. We've done a complete transformation with the funding that we had. Without it, we couldn't have done it. We've also done a complete overhaul to our long guns and our less than lethal, where we were totally dependent on the LESO program. And the weapons we were using are Vietnam era. Also, the fleet, we've done a complete overhaul there. Going forward, as if Chief Kreiner said, things have a shelf life. With us, load-bearing vests, carriers, trauma plates, ballistic vests, they expire every 5 years. So again, right now, we're in need. We're expired. We're expiring in the next 6 months to a year. That's $250,000 going forward. The Axon tasers that are the taser system that we use right now, over the past few years, these tasers are no longer being made and have become obsolete. All the tasers that the officers have, 40. We will have to, I want to go to an Axon taser, because again, if they break down, we can't get them replaced. We're looking at $200,000 just to replace tasers. Again, in 5 or 6 years, those will have to be, or you know, I'm hoping they last that long, they'll have to be replaced again. Our vehicle fleet, where 2 to 3 years ago, $43,000 were put in a vehicle on the streets. I just got a new number today. It's $73,000 to put all the equipment in a vehicle on the street. And you guys have been just terrific and fantastic when it comes to giving us support and giving us officers. But we got to remember, when I add officers, we add weapons, we add equipment, we add guns. So as we add officers, we have to add to our fleet. So just our fleet could be, just for 3 vehicles, is $219,000. For 4 vehicles, $292,000. That's a yearly number, because these cars are being run 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And with the leasing program, we have fixed a lot of that, because we went from 4 officers driving 1 vehicle to 2 cars in each vehicle. So our shelf life in those vehicles should be doubled. Software upgrades. If we do a PSAP consolidation, even if we don't, in the next few years, we're going to have to do a software upgrade. With Southern Software, we're probably 10 to 15 years old in that, and a lot of things we cannot do. I know I've talked to directors, and you've asked me about our website and different things. We just don't have the technology with the current system we're using. To go to Zucker or New World, we're looking at $800,000 to $1 million to replace. That needs to be replaced probably in the next 3 to 5 years. And that's putting it real. I'd like to replace it in the next 2 years, but again, we only have so much budget. Evidence managing software. We currently have over 5,000 pieces of evidence in our building. That's one of the daily things that I do, is trying to get rid of evidence in court cases and things like that. We have no managing software of any kind. We have a system that we came up with, so we need managing software. That's $10,000 to $15,000. Motorola WatchGuard, $200,000 to $250,000. Our current in-car camera systems are dated and no longer support by Motorola and WatchGuard. In 2 years, they were required to place everything that we have. The upgrade to Motorola WatchGuard system prices have increased to nearly $9,000 per unit. That's per car. Goal 3 years to replace that. Body cameras. One of the things I'd like to see in the next 2 to 3 years is going to body cameras. It's very expensive, $500,000. And these prices I'm giving you are prices I'm getting now. I don't know where they'll be in a year, 2 years, 3 years. Just things that we use every year is ammunition, Sims round, less than lethal. That's $20,000 to $25,000 every year. This next 3 days, the guys are at the range and they'll be qualifying. We have to qualify 2 times a year with handguns, 2 times a year with long guns. Uniform, PPE, weapons, equipment, small tools, equipment, system support, and supplies. This is something we use yearly, $60,000 to $75,000. Prisoner transport van. One of my goals is to do a part-time holding facility where the officers they're not out of town as much. So we're looking to $100,000 to $125,000 for a transport van. Motorola maintenance and support upgrades. This is something with the new Motorola system that we bought that I found out a few weeks ago that we have to pay a yearly fee for updates and people if things break down. It's $32,000, and they're telling me that's plus 5% yearly increase for every year going forward. Interview and observation rooms. We just had built their renovations. Our interview rooms when I got here weren't what we needed. So we just had 2 interview rooms built, and just for the observation rooms and camera systems, $20,000. The PD ID badges we use for in and out of building and our IDs, it's out of dated. It's over 15 years old. $15,000. One of the big ones for me is the office and multi-purpose training building and parking lot. I'm very, very happy what we have, but again, as we grow, we're just, our spaces are confined. So I put this together, and I'll try to be brief. Their current building at the PD we're housed in has a total of 16 offices and one 28 by 28 multi-purpose room for all in-house trainings, PD briefings, and meetings. So anytime we have a briefing, a meeting, or training, we got to make sure that room is empty, because we do 2 briefings a day. So it makes it very hard. The patrol division is housed in what we call the bullpen area and has 2 offices and 2 of the 16 offices, which are shared by 4 sergeants and 4 corporals. So 4 sergeants and 4 corporals share 2 offices. The bullpen area has 5 workstations for patrol offices. PD future growth calls for a minimum of 6 detectives. I currently have 4. As we grow, I don't have office space for them. We currently our narcotics and street crime unit will share 1 office, so that'll be anywhere from 6 guys in 1 office. The PD also houses the records and clerks division, evidence, motors, the jail, 911 dispatch, command staff, and support personnel. The PD currently houses over 5,000 pieces of evidence, which I told you earlier. We're running out of space. We're putting things on top of each other. The current parking lot that we have, it only has 37 parking spaces. And that gets, I don't know how we haven't wrecked more cars with the fire trucks and everybody coming in. And so we try to keep some spaces empty where they can cut the corners, because it's very hard for them to get in. So again, those are a lot of the issues that we're having. The city and the whole entire city fleet uses that parking for the gas fill-ups. Future growth will require additional space and parking. The need is to build office and multi-purpose training building and parking lot next to the current PD in the large vacant lot that we have. It also adds storage, somewhere to house our evidence. For future growth, it's needed. I would like to see this in the next 1 to 3 years. The cost right now is around $2 million. So in a nutshell, that's kind of everything going forward, which I see that we need. That's why the funding is so important to us, because without it, we can't. It's going to be hard to move. And again, I totally understand if you have to make a decision, we'll do the best we can going forward. So any questions for me?
Directors? Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Philip?
Madam Mayor, I asked them to give you their vision for their future needs, because we've talked in the past about the needs for streets. And as I said earlier, we have this street need, we have needs for public safety, and the needs are generally greater than the pot of money that we have. And you get the most difficult job, and I would almost go so far as to say, in my tenure here, this is one of the most important decisions I think you're going to have to make, or that I've brought to you, is what do you do? We can do a lot of great money. We can do a lot of great street projects with $2 million more. But it's going to leave a gap for police and fire. And that gap's going to have to be filled somehow, some way. So, do you let the split revert back to the way it was? Do you ask the voters to renew the current split? Do you ask the voters to make a modification to the split? And if you're going to do 2 or 3, do you ask them to make it for 10 years or permanent or 15 years or 12 years or what? If you're going to put something on the ballot, the first reading, if you're going to have 3 individual readings, needs to be in 2 weeks. And in order for that to happen, I need some feedback. You're not voting tonight what that is, but I need to hear at least what the majority is thinking so I can put some numbers in an ordinance and bring that to you for the first reading in 2 weeks. So thank you, Chiefs, and myself and the Chiefs are available for any questions, but we would like to hear from you before I go on to my official admin report.
Thank you, Philip. So, directors?
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
So I'll go first. So I'm open to either option 2 or 3. I think it's important that we fund our public safety as we grow. I want to stay safe in my community. We need to support public safety, but we also need to find ways. We recently had a vote to, if we were going to increase the funding for the utilities. And the conversation came about that the city needs to be conservative with their money. And we recently voted on the lawnmower thing. And I know it doesn't seem like a lot of money to a lot of people, but I believe if we use money like that and not so many new vehicles and not so many new toys, that maybe, and that's probably not a nice way to say that, but that we could use that money for the streets. We are experiencing growth, and I know people want our beautification, and I know people want their idea of how Siloam should be, but we need to look at the budget and how we fix some of these problems. Philip and Justin and I spent this last week going house to house looking at drainage issues that were major drainage issues. I mean, these people are having major problems. And we need to refocus on what are we spending our money on. But I don't want to take away from the police and fire, because we need our police and fire. We need to be safe. And if I call an ambulance, I want the ambulance to show up. If I call the police department, I want them there to protect me. But I think that we need to, like I said, I'm more inclined to do option 2, and I think it should be a 10-year. We don't know what's going to happen. With the economy the way it is, with everything that's going on, I would hate to say, yeah, I want to make a permanent decision, when I think that at that time the citizens, depending on what's going on in our country, what's going on in our community, let them make that decision. But so I'm more inclined for option 2 and for 10 years.
Thank you, Lisa. Marla?
Madam Mayor, thank you. Philip, I have a couple of quick questions. I know these probably come in as designated funds. Is there a time frame to use them? And if they're not used at the end of that time frame, are they rolled over into the general fund, or are they carried over in that fund to the next year?
They are designated funds. They can, once the voters vote, they can only be used for that. It doesn't have to be used in the 10 years. If there's remaining money that was generated during this 10-year period that's still in the fund balance at the end of October 2023, that money still has to be spent for police and fire or streets or whatever it is. It's a designated fund regardless whether it's spent before the split reverts or not. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, thank you. So I'm inclined to be 2 or 3, and I also agree with Director Risler that we need to reassess it in 10 years.
Thank you, Marla.
Mayor?
Yes, Brad.
There was a long pause. I was hoping Mindy would go because I was really interested in what she said, but she was staring at me. I think, you know, 10 years is a long time. I think 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 10 years is a long time. I You know, we just passed a resolution to do more maintenance on these fencing, and it requires a specific mower that's, you know, it's money in the budget for these departments. And so when we look at here, I'll get on my horse again. I've been shot down for 7.5 years with a radical concept because it's too progressive, and it's politically, I understand Philip's stance, it's very sensitive, but I believe we run the street department incorrectly. And anybody that's said here, it's on public record. I'm big into the private sector. I think anything we do a total rebuild on, it needs to be done in the private sector. I think we need to downsize the street department to a general maintenance, overlay, curb, gutter, sidewalk, that drainage, maybe that sort of thing, and reduce personnel. They'll be picked up locally because there's a ton of work out there, and that's how we're ultimately, in my humble view, over the past 7.5 years, going to stretch those street dollars out. And I won't waste your time because every board member's heard my lecture on that. And this year, I just feel, man, it's the only, it's the right way to go. And we don't have the personnel. We're spending an exorbitant amount of money, not on streets, but it's on personnel. The taxpayers bought millions of dollars worth of equipment, and I just think we're running those numbers incorrectly. And that's the solution on streets. On police and fire, Chief Harris, last time I saw him was Dogwood Festival. And he said to me, I won't repeat that, but I will say, man, just think, and Kreider just mentioned that, if we had the funding back then, Brad, look at what we could have done, which he was kindly saying, you wouldn't have been in my office so much, and he wouldn't have to write me up on occasion for being such a hard guy, right? That's what he was really saying. And public safety on the police side, and other than Uncle Sam land, I could never be a police officer in society. I just don't have the tolerance for it. But you know what's happening across the nation, and there's no way in your good right mind as a citizen of Siloam can reduce funding to the police department in this day and age. That's insanity. The cost of doing business for these chiefs to do recruitment and retention in the competitive market in the corridor with fire and police right now, they need to stay ahead of the game, and we've done that, and the citizens have done that, and it is the correct thing to do with option 2 to make it permanent so these guys can run a budget, and when Chief Kreiner leaves, the next guy steps in, and when Gilbert leaves, the next guy steps in. They can continue that flow and ensure that safety. It is not going to get any more, it's not going to get cheaper. And let me tell you, it's not going to get any safer. The feds can pass whatever they want to pass. We have an obligation to this community to ensure that we fund them completely. I, as a former fireman here, we bagged it, right? I mean, Larry's sitting out there as an old battalion chief. There's nothing these board members, they didn't have a choice. We just didn't have money in the budget. And we did things that if you talk to new guys at the firehouse today, and to them, their mind is blown that we wouldn't even done those sort of things. And we're on the right path to do that for them. I think, again, I'll beat this till the end of my term, is that we have to look at ourselves as a city and reevaluate how we're doing streets. That's where we're going to save the money. So it's obviously option 2 and permanent. Thank you.
Thank you, Brad. Mindy?
Since we're going down the line, first I want to thank Chief Kreiner and Chief Gilbert for providing the information about your long-term plans. It's very helpful to know that you're being proactive and just thinking about your needs to protect the citizens of Siloam. And I also am very grateful to the citizens for voting on that split 10 years ago to give you all the funding that you needed to keep your departments top notch. Definitely don't want to take money away from the police or fire departments, at least large amounts. With that said, I have talked to several citizens myself who are sort of in that option 3 category. What they have relayed to me is sort of what it seemed like those that Philip talked to were relaying. I don't feel comfortable taking away a full 5% from each department, but I would be comfortable with giving 5% extra back to streets, because we do hear so much about those streets. And if I thought we could snap our fingers and make changes that Director Burns mentioned right off the bat, maybe we could consider something like that. I don't know that that's feasible in the next few years, so I do think we need to be thinking about those streets. As far as the length, I think permanent would be good, because I do think that at least, even though we might be reducing what fire and police are getting by 2.5%, having that be long-term or permanent gives you all the ability to plan out further. And it will be something that the citizens will decide, because they will be able to vote on that. If they don't want it to be permanent, they won't vote on it. If they do want it to be permanent, they will vote on it. So I'm very comfortable with option 3A and a permanent.
Thank you, Mindy. Carol?
This is a very, very difficult decision, because these are all important to our citizens. You know, I ride down our streets and I bump along and I complain to my husband about his bad driving. And he says, no, it's the streets. But fire and police, our safety, I think, is extremely important. I might not use them every day, but when I need them, I want them there. And I appreciate everything that they do. And I know the citizens continue to ask us to repair our streets. But if we did not have safety features, they would be even more upset, I do believe. I tend to go with number 2. I do not want to take money away from fire and police. If something happened, my heart would really feel bad. I'd feel bad if something happened with the streets. But I think that fire and police is more important. So I would go along with 2. I would like to make it permanent, because I do believe fire and police need to know what they're working with so that they can make their budgets on, because they make their budgets on a long-term basis. They don't do it just for a couple of years. They do it for at least 10 years, maybe even longer. That doesn't mean I am not behind our street department. I appreciate everything that they've done. I appreciate everything that our staff does. But I'm hoping that there's some way that we can look at our total budget and see if there's some way we can make up enough, or at least some, for streets. But I do not want to take away from police and fire. So I would go for 2 and make it permanent.
Thank you, Carol. Reed?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like to see the police department and the fire department, like to see them have the opportunity to do their job and to do it with excellence, as they have shown us, as we have seen. concerning our streets, I like kind of Brad's or Director Burns' position on that. We need to define who we are. Are we in the building, or are we in the maintaining? And I believe we're getting there. I see some signs that we are defining who we are and where we're going with our streets and how we will best serve our community, and what we will farm out to someone else who can do that job for us, and what we can take care of ourselves. We are making inroads into our street maintenance. We actually have a plan. Yes, we're a community that, or the last 100 years, we didn't require curb and gutter on every street. So there's some makeup ground that we are working with, and we have a plan to do that. Will it be overnight? No, but we actually have a plan instead of just saying, well, we'll get to it when we get there. No, we're working with that, and I'm glad to see that. I'd like to see us go with number 2 so that we can maintain where we are. I would like to see it go permanent so that we have the opportunity to plan down the road. But I do think it would be wisdom for us to reevaluate at least every 5 years to look at that and see where we are, see if we're heading in the right direction still, and if we need to make adjustments or just redo it all together. Number 2 and permanent.
Thank you, Reed. Philip?
All right. Thank you, Board. What I took from that is that based on the number here, the option is 2 with permanent. So we'll draft that up. You'll have further discussions, I'm sure, about this before you have the first reading, but that's the direction that at least gives us a starting point for future discussions. Thank you very much.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I have a question for Philip real
Yes.
quick. Could you give us an idea of the percentage of each of the operating budgets that the tax dollars come in as? I don't need it right now, but next
I
meeting.
will, yeah.
Yeah.
I said that publicly, and I didn't have all the numbers. So I'll come back with the percentage of total revenue for police and fire and a percent of what that sales tax runs. Okay.
All right, thank you.
As it relates to my administrator's report, speaking of dollars and funding, I have a number of expenditures to report. And please recognize that as I report this, a lot of times these wouldn't be reported. My requirement is to report any expenditures over $30,000, and a lot of these in years past haven't been over $30,000, so they haven't been to report. But with the cost of everything today, seems like everything we do was over $30,000 lately. So, with that being said, $37,334.02 in the solid waste division for 8 2-yard and 20 6-yard rear load dumpsters. We have a high demand for those dumpsters, and we can usually make a decent return on that to rent those out. In the solid waste department, $46,772.93 on 296-gallon and 464-gallon roll trash carts for residential due to growth. And then also 464-gallon recycling bins and 600 lids for those recycling bins, because we tend to lose some of the lids at times. In the fuel farm, we spent $31,023.20 for fuel. That is usually less than $30,000. Same thing for airport. We had 3 purchases of fuel, $40,400 for 8,000 gallons of Jet A fuel, and then because of the usage, we had to turn around and buy it again for $35,440 for 8,000 gallons of Jet A fuel. $40,240 for another 8 gallons of the lower lead Jet A fuel for resupplying. And in the electric department, $37,584.40 for thermal detection traffic cameras for the intersection of Ravenwood and Highway 412. We've been buying these one at a time for various intersections, and what this does, we've had cameras there and we've been able to use the cameras to switch the traffic signals, but sunlight reflection and their ode, and it creates problem. These are thermal cameras and they can see the engines, and it operates those traffic signals at a much greater efficiency. $53,500 in the electric department for the clearing of trees in Section 2 West right-of-way. And then $45,099 for electric for 300 AMI meters, the automatic meter read meters, and that's for new services and inventory. And the second bullet under the next section, under Resolution 6121, should have, I think, been on under just the regular expenditures. $34,673.04 in the electric department for 60 insulators and 84 post insulators for inventory. And then under that approval of Resolution 6121, which you gave us some time ago, to prevent the bidding out for certain inventory items in utilities only because we couldn't get bids because nobody would honor a bid, you increased the expenditure amount to $100,000. So $97,320 for 40 25 kVA single-phase pad mount transformers for inventory and new customers, and then $77,600 in electric for 50 25-foot base poles for the electric department, and also that is inventory, and all that's really based on growth. Those transformers, as always, transformers are hard to get right now, so we're agreeing to these, and we hope that they will be scheduled for production in early 2023, and we'll get them in later in 2023. The good news is that our May sales tax receipts are up. For the month, it wasn't as great as it was last month, but it's up 1.7%, and year to date, it's up 12.2% compared to this time last year. And for the county sales tax, our portion of that, it's up 3.5%, and year to date is up 4.2%. So when we talk about 3 and 4% growth, we're looking at that long-term 10 years. And so earlier when I said it's averaging 4%, but this is looking at the same time last year on that year to date. And then I wanted to congratulate and let everybody know that we had a bond clerk in the district court, Tammy French, who retired after 22 years of employment. And I just wanted to go publicly and thank her for her service. She did a really good job for the city, and I wish her the best. So, Madam Mayor, that's my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Philip. So at this time, we are now to the administrator's report. And Mindy, we will start with you tonight, and Carol, you will end with you.
Okay.
So Mindy?
Okay, once again, I want to thank the chiefs for being here to talk about your long-term plans. As the only one who actually said 3A, I do want to just say I appreciate the board too for the conversation. I think the citizens will be comfortable with that recommendation. It was very close with the public citizens that Philip talked to, and it was pretty close with the ones that I talked to. So I'm very comfortable with that, and look forward to how you all will be able to plan if the citizens do vote to continue with the split the way it is permanently. And thank you also just for the work that you do for the city. Thank you, Tyler, for being here, and the rest of you for being here tonight. And I think that's about all. Oh, no, one more thing. Sort of back to that split. I do, a couple of board members mentioned the streets and that we do have some plans on the streets. I do want to be sure and keep that in the forefront of our mind, because it is, as public safety and streets are very close in importance to citizens. And so we do want to just keep those streets. And I appreciate that we have been working on a master plan, and we just need to keep doing what we can to make sure that the streets are in good shape.
Thank you, Mindy. Brad?
I'm excited about the 2040 comprehensive plan, and I was happy with the workshop. We were a little short with it, but I thank everybody that worked on that one. And I don't know if we're keeping track yet, but I drove by Simon Sager Drive the other day, and it looks like we had our first fairly gnarly accident. We had all the equipment out there, so let's start keeping tabs for RDOT as we continue to struggle with the safety there on 412 and as we continue to develop out there. I'm not going to mention again, but I will one more time. Northwest Arkansas Stormwater Discussion. It's June 21. You can register on IRWP's website. I know a couple of board members asked me about why I keep mentioning these things and attending that. But I think, once again, that's our long-term solution. When it comes to the split, I'm not anti-street department. I just think after you do it so long and we're not happy with our production and the citizens aren't happy, you just have to reevaluate operationally what you're doing. And obviously, we need to change how we're doing business when it comes to streets to make those dollars go farther. And lastly, Chautauqua Amphitheater Friday night has music. Saturday is Center of the Arts. They have a play down there. So the downtown will be live and full of vibrant noise Friday.
Good.
So just give you a heads up on that new
We're,
ordinance.
we're an exception.
And then I know we didn't pull it from the consent agenda, but I like to thank Jimmy and Larry for showing up and showing our support for the old plan, as I like to call it. And I look forward to hopefully living long enough to watch at least Larry and Jimmy roll over to the new plan and join the rest of us. So if God is good to us, maybe we'll be on the planet long enough to see that happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Brad. Marla?
Thanks. And when you say Jimmy, I don't know who you're talking about because it's Jimmy Dawn. But I do thank you all for being in attendance and for sharing with us, because public safety is vital, and with all the technology and new changes, updates constantly, expenses are going to be there, and we need to make sure that you all stay safe to keep us safe. So I have just a few little items that I need to bring up. It's time to start cutting your grass again, has been for about a month or two. Lawn clippings go not on the street, but in your yard or somewhere where the bicyclist and the cyclist aren't going to have an accident if they hit those. Children playing, they're out, they're about. Be safe when you're driving through neighborhoods. Cars are parked along the streets. Kids dart out after a ball. And it's very important that you watch out for our children. There have been some issues with the dumpsters and recycling, and I think that for me to get some questions done, I'd probably like to sit down and visit with someone at the sanitation department and see if there's some things that we can do about the recycling trailers. They're getting full, the cardboard's blowing out, and if we are actually, worried about saving the environment, we need to make sure that we're recycling like we plan to. Plus, the site where we do our drop-off at the sanitation department, we need to police it a little better, I think.
May I?
Yes.
I apologize, and I meant to have that on my staff report. Based on everything that I'm seeing in discussion with staff, we are seriously looking at having to move those back into the fenced area. I haven't made the decision yet. That decision to move them out for 24-hour public access was done a few years ago in an attempt to try to increase. But over the weekends, every weekend, we get more contamination in the recycling bins. We get more trash. We are, short-staffed a little bit on sanitation, so trying to keep it clean is becoming more of a problem. But the bigger problem is those who contaminate the bins, and then we have to take that in and dump those bins and sort that out.
Resort.
So I meant to say that on my staff report, and I apologize that we are seriously considering moving those back in, and we're going to look at some other issues, but I don't know today that there's any other choice. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Philip. Also, I had a comment about when we're mowing the center medians on 412, that our signage needs to be a little bit further out so the traffic can realize sooner that they're going to have to merge over. And I just, I had a couple of people come up to me and say that it was almost causing an accident because it was just happening so quick. And I'm loving the discussion about detention and retention ponds because I feel like there's a fix. I don't know what it is, but like Director Burns said, we're not doing it right yet, and we don't want to create more problems for ourselves. Kayak Park, of course, that's in my ward, and we have done and done and done to keep it up and running and modifying it every year to keep the traffic controlled, keep the neighbors happy, and I have a concern with that, and I don't know what we can do, but there's constant issues that go on down there, and is there anything that we can do to better about looking about it, especially this time of year?
We've been working on it, and we'll bring a short report to give you an update of where we are at the next board meeting.
All right, thank you. Also, in the past, we had talked about an employee directory, and I just wanted to throw that out there again, so we might be able to get one of those soon. And tonight, coming back just from the east side of town, the traffic, the turn lane is not a turn lane, it's a speed up, it's a stop and try to get over and cause an accident while someone else is coming across. And I think that we need to talk to RDOT, see what they can do to help us out there. I don't know if we need to take a center median all the way out to 59 and do 3 lanes on each side of that center median.
Part of your goals that I'm trying to draft for 2023 and 24 includes that accelerating phase 2 for RDOT. As we discussed, RDOT looks at the remaining improvements on 412 as mid-range and long-term project. Mid-range being 5 to 10 years from 2020, I believe it was, and that is widening it from Washington to Highway 16. And their view is that from 16 to 59 is a 10 to 20 year timeline. As part of that goal, I think there are options that we've got to further research, but part of your goal for us is to try to figure out if we can get RDOT to move those timelines up, and specifically the first one, and maybe even the second one. Because as we discussed, and the mayor was there in a discussion with RDOT some time ago, we believe that 5 to 10 years from 2020, does that mean 2028, 2029? We can't survive that, RDOT. And even 10 to 20 years on the final phase, we can't survive that. So I think there are some options. It will require some partnership with RDOT to make it work, and that usually means money.
Well, the accidents are happening and loss of life is beginning. So we need to make sure that we work on that and make that a priority. And last of all, it's going to be Rodeo Week next week. Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, 7:30. So I'm really excited. The rodeo's older than me and Jimmy, so, Jimmy Don. So I hope y'all go out and support them. They have done a lot of improvements out there, they've said. And, you know, we had talked in the past about moving it and didn't find that feasible. But they have spent some money and some time out there, and I'm really excited to go visit with everybody. And that's my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Marla. Lisa?
I want to say thank you to Tyler for coming tonight. I wish you good luck on that. And thank you, Jimmy and Larry, for coming tonight. I wish we could have had the same funding when you guys were here, and for our IT, since I worked in IT. Thank you to the American Legion for the Memorial Day celebration ceremony. Mayor Judy did an amazing job. It was a great ceremony. When you got there, the VFW lined the sidewalk with the flags, and a lot of great speakers. They have it every year. If you ever have a chance to attend, it's a great ceremony. Thank you to Justin and Philip. We spent a lot of time last week in ditches, looking at drainages and issues, and so I appreciate them taking time, because there's times we were out there till 6 or 7 at night talking to citizens. I appreciate that they spent the time hearing what the citizens had to say, seeing what they have to say, and that we're going to look into those issues for them. Drainage is, we have a lot of drainage issues in our town, and so we really need to start looking at how we plan for that in the future. And so I'm probably going to keep riding that horse like Director Burns says. I'm going to keep riding it, because it is a major issue. I've stood in people's houses that have water in their house, and so if it was your home, you would want something done. And so that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Reed?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Today I got to see an example of who Siloam Springs is, who we are. I was driving down Mount Olive and doing my best to keep my eye on the road. But as I was driving by the library, I saw the little kiddos out playing in the splash pad, or the water. What's our proper term for that? Water feature. And to me, that represents who we are. These children were playing, having a good time. They were not concerned for their safety, well-being, because nobody was there to try to snatch them away. And they weren't looking to go get on their electronic device. They were enjoying the outdoors. And to me, that was just the epitome of who we're trying to get to be. And I almost pulled in the parking lot just so I could watch them a little bit, but I'm sure I'll get to do that with my own grandchildren here sometime this summer. But it's very good to see that, and it just reminds me that we live in a wonderful place, and I'm very glad and very proud to be a part of it. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Reed. Carol?
Well, I want to thank everybody that did come today. It's always nice to have a nice audience. I think we've had some good discussion this evening. I appreciated the fire and the police discussion. And I know we're past Memorial Day, but I do want to thank those that placed the flags on the sites of the veterans. I think that's what it's for Memorial Day, and for the service that was done. I'm looking forward to going to the Chautauqua, I have a hard time saying that, Amphitheater Friday and Saturday. I think it's what it's there for, and we're going to make good use of it this summer. And I think most everything has been said tonight. I will agree that we do have a stormwater drainage problem, and we need to take a look at that and start working on that a little bit more. And Madam Mayor, I move that we adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed, we are adjourned. Thank you.